using that kind of terminology about us ensuring that we can get the Great Norfolk sausage properly sold and consumed in Belfast, which is part of the internal UK market, doesn't seem particularly appropriate.
We'll put some of that now to Brandon Lewis, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. Good morning. Welcome to Times Radio.
Good morning.
Brandon, we heard there from Dr. Mike Johnston, who said that the protocol is working well for his members. A majority of members elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly also support the protocol. So shouldn't the UK government respect that there's a lot of backing for it and seek to negotiate improvements where needed with the EU, rather than take drastic unilateral action with the legislation set to be published tomorrow?
Well, a couple of things in there, Lucy. First of all, the reality is all of the parties in Northern Ireland, the political parties, have said that the protocol in its current format isn't working and they want to see change. So the reality is all the party leaders have been very clear about that, to be fair to them. And we want to see change as well, change that works. But change that also means we don't detrimentally affect some of the benefits that industries like the dairy industry, and I know Mike very well, we meet regularly, that they have benefited. And I think I did see all of the interview with Mike, but Mike would generally be pretty clear about the fact that he also respects that there are parts of the protocol that are detrimentally affecting other industries. So we want to fix those without losing the benefits of that north-south trade. That's about respecting all three parts of the Good Friday Agreement. And one of the problems we've had with the challenges and the pressures on the Belfast Good Friday Agreement has been that the EU have effectively only been respecting one strand, that north-south strand. We wanted to ensure that all three strands of it, north, south, east, west, and the institutions of Northern Ireland are respected, and the spirit of that Belfast Good Friday Agreement is delivered on.
One of the big questions is whether the government plans to scrap the role of the European Court of Justice in Northern Ireland. Can you confirm whether that will be included in the legislation tomorrow?
Well, I'm not going to prejudge. It's right that we allow Parliament to have first sight of the legislation, but we've been very clear from the beginning that the governance issue we understand is an issue. It is a problem for people in Northern Ireland. It's particularly a problem in the unionist community because it's part of the issue about identity. And again, part of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is respecting both the core communities of Northern Ireland and the unionist community do have an issue around with identity, which I think sometimes our colleagues and friends in the EU struggle to understand. But it's also an issue that there is a structure there that now doesn't need to work in that way. What came after the protocol was that wider TCA, the trade agreement that has a more traditional independent arbitration process to resolve issues, which is a much more logical way to deal with that kind of trade and international trade agreement.
So just to clarify, it sounds like, in your opinion, it's wrong that the ECJ still has a role in a part of the United Kingdom after Brexit.
Yes, it is wrong that at the moment, and it's proving part of the problem of having UK internal markets, having governance from the CJU. There's no logic to that. As I say, you've got to remember this was agreed before the wider TCA, which has got a better, more traditional process of dealing with international arbitration. The EU agreed as part of the TCA, and therefore it should be quite logical to take that kind of approach to the protocol now that that is there and working.
Now, EU figures have warned that unilateral action on the protocol by Britain may spark an all-out trade war. Can the government really risk that with Britain's biggest trading partner, particularly when the cost of living is already biting hard?
Well, I think some of our friends and colleagues in the EU, and I've done work in the EU when I was at the Home Office on security and that, they're good friends and partners, obviously, across the EU, and an important friend and trading partner for us across all the members of the EU. But I think that kind of language is really unhelpful. I think it's unnecessary as well, particularly at a time where all of our focus in that sense should be on getting the proper kind of strictures and regimes and impediments on the Putin regime, sanctions on the Putin regime to really bite and work. To therefore be using that kind of terminology about us ensuring that we can get the Great Norfolk sausage properly sold and consumed in Belfast, which is part of the internal UK market, doesn't seem particularly appropriate. But as I say, when we publish this legislation tomorrow, I hope people will see that this is a sensible way to resolve what has been a continual problem for the last 18 months. We've put forward proposals, we outlined some in our command paper that would do that. The EU haven't properly engaged on that, haven't shown the flexibility we need to see. And then we always said, look, there is a point where we would have to take action as the UK government. We have a duty to fix this problem for the citizens of the UK and obviously specifically the people of Northern Ireland.
Well, you're suggesting there that the EU shouldn't be seeking to, inflame the situation with the UK at a time when the West needs to show unity in the face of Putin's aggression. But surely EU figures would say that's disingenuous. It's the UK that's making the antagonistic move here by introducing unilateral action.
Well, if you take, let me just give an example. Around spring last year, I was criticised because we were taking unilateral action to extend the grace periods. because that hadn't been done by agreement. And we had to make the point that we've been talking about trying to agree it for some weeks. And we've got to a point where if we didn't take that action, we'd have empty shelves, food shelves in Northern Ireland. So we took that decision and we put in unilateral action to extend the grace periods. That's now been recognised as having been the right thing to do. The EU, although they complained at the time, and the Irish government, that it was the right thing to do. And eventually that developed into the standstill that we have today on those issues. These are the things that haven't yet been resolved. And we try through negotiation to resolve these issues. But there is a point, coming to the point Mike was just making to yourselves, where business needs stability and certainty going forward. We haven't been able to get that with the EU. We haven't seen the flexibility from the EU, and we've been very clear there is a point where we therefore will have to take action. When they see what we're proposing tomorrow, I hope that they will see that we are respecting and protecting their single market, which has never been under threat, but also protecting not just the UK internal market, but the wider Belfast Good Friday Agreement, something they pledged to do as well, and I hope they will see it in that way.
There's been a big row over the legality of the government's plans, with critics insisting it breaches international law. Downing Street has agreed to publish only a summary of the government's legal advice tomorrow. Why won't you publish the whole thing?
Well, governments don't publish details behind advice given to ministers. That's part of the people being able to have that free and open discussion as they're formulating policy. But we are going to set out the government's legal position and our methodology for that. And I think, again, when people see the legislation, rather than some of these people have picked up in tidbits over the last few weeks, when they see the detail of the legislation, they'll see we are acting within international law. And if we go back as far as 2019, again in spring of 2019, where the then Attorney General was very clear that primacy must and will always by the UK government be given to the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. And that's something I hope the Irish government, as part of the EU and the EU themselves, will also respect and see is logical in what we're proposing tomorrow.
But I think specifically with this argument about the legality of this bill, which has, significant constitutional consequences in potentially, usually it would have been put before Treasury Counsel Sir James Eadie for a proper legal opinion from him. It's been reported that that hasn't happened. So don't you accept that the failure to do this creates the perception that this legislation is of questionable legality and that ministers have something to hide?
Well, there's a lot of people who are never in support of Brexit in the first place, who keep putting rumours out there and stories out there about what they think and they might possibly be happening if perhaps one day. Look, the reality is tomorrow people will see the legislation. They'll see the government's legal position on it. We believe we are acting and we can show we are acting within international law. And ultimately, this is about protecting and delivering on the spirit and the detail in all three strands of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. We owe it to the people in Northern Ireland to resolve this issue. All the political parties want to see the issues resolved. I accept not all of them want to see us taking unilateral action, but we have come to that point where we do need to take action to resolve the issues that have been outstanding for far too long, and we need to get that resolved.
And finally, just on another subject, are you concerned about Prince Charles' private remarks about the government's Rwanda immigration policy?
Well, again, this is somebody reporting on what they possibly heard without any context, maybe, perhaps, and I think it's unhelpful to comment on those kind of things. The reality is this is a policy, which I have to say the Rwanda policy I fully support, having been Immigration and Security Minister in the past. It's one that gives a very clear message to people, smugglers and people traffickers and modern slavery criminals, that we are going to break their business model. We want to make sure that people who come to this country, come here legally, whether it's as migrants, asylum seekers or refugees, that they've got the proper support there to integrate and become a productive part of society, which is, in my experience, what they want as well. To do that, we've got to be clear that illegal routes will be broken and will not work. And this is part of that policy, but it is just part of the wider package.
Brandon Lewis, Northern Ireland Secretary of State, thank you for joining us this morning.